If you would like to check out all of my sounds, samples, and presets, all links are in the bio. So finding a video of Tiesto making music on the internet is very hard to do, mainly because it doesn't exist. And honestly, a part of me likes that because it keeps everything a mystery. So I decided to make a New Year's Eve remix inspired by Tiesto. So he does these New Year's Eve VIP remixes. So this year he did 1035 and last year he did the Motto. And that inspired me to hop in FL Studio last night and whip up something that I think, you know, could go along with that Tiesto New Year's Eve VIP mix vibe. And I wanted to go for a tech house vibe, but also maybe like a David Guetta sort of future rave style as well. And I'll go ahead and drop all the sounds from this project in a New Year's Eve remix kit. And I used a lot of Serum in this project, but there's also a couple of Vital presets as well. So you guys will get the Serum and Vital presets and also all of the process samples too. So like I said, I chose to do a Taylor Swift song and I just really picked one at random. I think I like this one because it had that 4/4 kick. But it was at 97, so we have to speed it up to 130. So I started by adding some drums just to get some momentum going. And I didn't want to spend too much time in the build-up, in the verse, and everything like that, because if I can't get a decent drop idea, there's no point in spending a lot of time making a build-up and doing a lot of other things in the verse. And I had arranged this in my head before, so I wanted to build it up into this atmospheric, not hands-up moment, but to where you're almost in a space. And I was going for that David Guetta future rave type of sound here. So I took this dirty bass preset inspired by Own Boss, put Lux Verb, which is a new reverb inside of FL Studio, put that into envelope mode. This will essentially take out the reverb when there's audio. So when that bass shot is playing, all the reverb ducks. Then after that, it gives you that sucking effect. So the reverb comes up after the audio is done playing. It's similar to what David Guetta did in his Titanium remix, and also you guys might know it as the Brooks effect. I threw in a small kick for some impact, and just a clock sample to keep the rhythm going. So let me give you an idea of what I wanted to do when I was making it. So I knew I wasn't gonna have a chord progression drop. That was out of the question. I don't know why, I just wanted to do something that was riding off the root note of the key we're in. So we're in G sharp minor, and I wanted to have a drop that pretty much just rode that note with a bass line. And then I grabbed this ravey synth preset from Top 100 to get me started with that lead melody. So the first 4 bars are going to be more of a big room, minimal drop. We're gonna have that stab in there. We're gonna have a synth lead, and then eventually we're gonna put a bass in there as well. And then after that, I wanted to make it a little more melodic because I like having melodic music. That's just my preference, which we'll obviously touch on the second part of the drop very soon. Let's lay down our kick. We're gonna find a subby bass preset and add some pitch bend occasionally just to make it groove a little bit. And I copied over the synth lead MIDI from the first part, but I made it a little bit different for these 4 bars here. And throughout the song, I made each individual part different, but not so different to where it's unrecognizable, but just making little tweaks in the rhythm. So my mindset was to just change the rhythm slightly, ever so slightly, to where it just sounds fresh every time. So I'm really just riding off of the fact that the song is evolving throughout the entire drop. And then I threw in this synth shot for a little bit of ear candy. It's like a random synth shot, but this was a decent starting point for the main idea at least. All right, so if we repeated this, it would get very boring very quickly. So at this point in my head, I wanted to essentially double the energy of that first part because there's really not that much happening there. We have the bass stab, we have the sub, and the lead. And a kick. That's really all it is. And as simple as that is, that gives us a lot of room to just go crazy and add a lot more strategic elements to give it a lot more energy. So what things can we add to actually give that second part of the drop? How can we give that more power? So I started by duplicating the lead synth, and then I played some support notes a couple octaves higher. And keep in mind, these notes are a little bit different and they're also 2 octaves higher, so it instantly gives us a little more of that lead feeling. And honestly, the drums are gonna do most of the work here, adding in different loops, rides, and hats, and everything you can imagine. Because keep in mind, we had just a kick before. When we add in our hi-hats, our rides, claps, everything, that's honestly where most of the energy is gonna come from, if we're gonna be honest. I added a ton of those. On the left side of FL Studio, I like to type in whatever pack you're going for, but I like to type in nitric, percussion loops. Then I'll literally just find a loop, throw it in, maybe find a certain section I like. If I don't like it, take it out and throw another one in and do the same thing. And by the end of it, you're gonna end up with a full rack of drums, and it sounds a lot more energetic than that first part. And I also added a couple of these vocal samples. Go. And I still felt like it was missing a little bit of melodic atmosphere. So I added the soft Tiesto pad from Famous, and I just play the corresponding chord that goes with the bass note. And also, like I said before, I wanted to give a little bit of variation to the mood, the emotion to the song. I went between the G sharp note, which was the main root note of the key, and then I went down to the 5, which is the F sharp. And just that little bit of variation to the bass note, it makes it fresh, and it also makes the melodic part a little more, it just gives us a little more movement. And like I think I've said it 3 times already, it just evolves the song a lot more. So now let's touch on some of the things that can make the song pop a lot more, because at this point it sounds okay, but it's a little robotic. So we can add a few more tiny things that make a big difference in the overall song. So I added some of these reverse synth leads. We have some lead automation from the macros of the Serum synth. And the macro that does a lot of the work here is changing it from a more of a plucky sound to more of a sustained sound. And that's, in a way, giving it a little bit more power and just changing it a little bit on certain parts. And then some stereo imaging automation on the lead. So on certain parts, I have the lead being a little more mono, but when the drop comes, I put it back to its normal state. So I'm not making the lead wider with this. I'm making it mono in certain parts, so therefore it's going to sound more wide when it actually comes, but that's just actually how it was in general. Just a little trick for you. And then I made just a little drum fill. And that big reverb on the bass stab, I took it out completely for the melodic part, mainly because it was just way too crowded. The reverb was bleeding into everything. Because we already have a lot of things going on. We have all those drums, we have more synth leads, and that reverb on the bass, it just got in the way. But in that minimal big room part, it was perfect because all we had was the stab, the sub bass, and the lead. So it gave me like a Fisher losing it type of vibe, big hall reverb on the stab, but we obviously transitioned out of that into more of a melodic section, so I just completely scrapped the reverb for that part. And some white noise shots that go with the lead rhythm. For the verses and build up and things like that, I added some typical elements. Just little things. I really didn't change that much in terms of the song. I wish I could change some of the chord progressions. I obviously can't change the song itself. I did add a second build up and also a second drop section as well. And one final thing is a dark counter melody that goes along with that main song pretty well. And it really doesn't have that much presence outside of this part, but I think it sounds pretty cool. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how you make a New Year's Eve remix. Is it really Tiesto? I'm not really too sure. I had that in mind. It was just a little bit of a fun experimental song in my opinion. So with that said, here's a full playthrough for you.
I've been under scrutiny, yeah, oh yeah. You handle it beautifully, yeah, oh yeah. All this shit is new to me, yeah, oh yeah. I feel the lavender haze creeping up on me. So real, I'm damned if I do give a damn what
But